and I would have. I mean, I don't know much about him, but I know that he's a great prospect, and I think prospects are, I would have tried to beat Crystal Palace to the punch at Eberici Eze, for example. He looks like an exciting prospect, and I think sometimes you throw someone in at the deep end and they can do that work. I mean, I'd want to. That's what I want to see is some sparks, some drive, a bit of zip,
Do you think though that maybe Jose's actually trying to get someone in, and that's why we haven't got anybody in yet, because they're still trying to close the deal? I don't know. I'm just guessing here. I've got no idea.
Well, we need to don't we need to close deals quicker? Really? I mean,
we do.
I know it's
but you can't necessarily always do that.
The interesting thing I thought yesterday, to be honest, is I remember thinking this on the opening day of a season when Harry Redknapp was the manager. He made some really weird decisions. And I thought this is him trying to call out, saying, we're not ready for this. We need to make some signings. And I wonder if there was a little bit of that yesterday. I don't know.
It's possible. But, I don't know. It just get Danny Rose to go and knock on the gaffer's office. Send him out to leave. Danny Rose is not averse to...
I'm a bit sad about Danny Rose, to be honest.
Me too.
I think he's a great player. I think that after all this time, to just sort of leave under a cloud, which is what he's going to end up as, I think is an absolute travesty. Of 13 years, he's our longest serving player, from that first goal, which was an absolute, what a way to arrive in your new team and to kind of be a great kind of, he was a great player. He's been a great player for us over the years, really, because he's been consistent and I admire him for speaking up around his mental health, speaking up around the racism he's faced, all of those things. Yeah. And then for him to just kind of not get a squad number and to sort of be cast aside like that, I'm really sad about that, actually.
I'm sad about that. And I think for all the reasons that you mentioned, and I kind of, the speaking out about the mental health and the speaking out about the racism and all of that, I think, has to be commended and applauded. But I wonder if he kind of shot himself in the foot because, as he said, even you see it in the, in the All or Nothing series where he said it. He's too honest. He's too open with his with his thoughts. And I think sometimes you need to learn or know when to hold counsel and just to sort of say, right, okay, I might just hold my tongue here and then and deal with that in a different way. And I wonder if that's what's come back to bite him, which, as you say, would be a shame if that is the case, because he was committed to the club, committed to the team, always wanting, always give his best for the club and wanting to like us to do really well. And even some of the stuff that he's come out with is because he wants us to be better. You know what I mean? He wanted us to achieve more. So, I don't know. It's a bit of a shame.
It's going to take its toll, though. It takes its toll either way. It takes its toll when you speak up. It takes its toll when you don't. And also, you can't get away from the fact that, and this happens in workplaces the world over, I imagine, when you speak up about racism particularly, you get branded as a troublemaker. I've put inverted commas out for those for those listening. And then it affects your career. And that's not on. Those are the structures that we need to unpick across our working, across our industries.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. Okay. So I think on that note, because it was a good note and a good segue, we can move into our fans in focus part, Chris. And we've been talking for quite a long time, so I think we need to try to be conscious of the time because we.
Oh God, look at the time! Jesus.
Yeah, we're supposed to we're supposed to keep it to an hour. We never ever do. So
no, we don't.
We'll do a quick 5 to 10 to 20 minutes on you in fans in focus.
I've still got to have my dinner. I didn't realise what the time.
Oh, have you? Oh, wow. Okay. So we'll be brief, and you can skim through this part, but you need to give us detail. You need to give us detail. So, the first thing I was going to talk about was Proud Lily Whites and news, but you've already spoken about that, I think, in terms of, things being slightly different and how you dealt with lockdown and how you've reached out to to different members and everything, which is really good. But having a quick peek at your bio earlier today on Twitter, you seem to be involved. I don't know how you. No wonder you haven't eaten. I don't know how you have time for eating because you seem to be involved in like a million things. So you're involved in the IAB, which is like Inclusion Advisory Board, is it?
Advisory Board, that's right, yeah.
So how long have you been involved in that?
It's about 2.5 years now. So it was a 2-year term initially, and then I was reappointed. My term ended, and I reapplied, and I was reappointed. But that was just before. That was the back end of the year, the back end of last year. So of course we haven't really started in earnest now because football stopped.
Okay.
So yeah, that's been about 2.5 years.
And is that a national or is it?
Yeah, it's the FA's Inclusion Advisory Board. So it's an advisory board that's chaired by Paul Elliott, who used to play for Chelsea and Charlton, and but Paul's on the non-voting member of the FA board, and he brings together a group of advisory board members to sort of be a good sort of check and challenge on the FA's inclusion. Equality and diversity stuff, for want of a better way of putting it.
Okay.
So obviously, you've been in, like I said, we're going to try and. You've got about 20 other things here, so we've got to go through them all. But how did you actually? You say it's 2.5 years now, but how did you actually get involved in the first?
So let me tell you. I'm going to tell you a little story, and this will hopefully kind of do all of that. So I'm about 4 years ago now. Just over 4 years ago, I left a full-time job that I used to work like 7 a.m. till gone 7 p.m. Because it was time to sort of have a different life. And there's personal reasons for that, which I won't go into because I might cry, but that's another story. And in that, I decided I wanted to work for myself, and I've worked really hard in only working 3 days a week, so I can fill all this other stuff. Now, I've always been a campaigner, right, in my heart. I never knew this until I sat and thought about it. When I was like 13 years old, it was a really cold winter, and the girls in my school weren't allowed to wear trousers. So I started a campaign at school, petitions and all sorts of things, understand your audience, figure out who you're talking to, what the touch points need to be, etc. And for girls to wear trousers because we were cold, right?
Yeah.
That worked. And when I went to university, I joined the women's group, and I was the chair of the women's group, and we did various things there, and etc. etc. But when I was working, so I then went and worked actually in the private sector, and all the people that knew me at university couldn't believe it because they were like, "Where's this?" I used to do all sorts of things. I was a vegan in the 90s. We used to go hunt stabbing and all sorts of things. So, people couldn't believe that I was working in the private sector, but I worked really hard for a number of years. And then one day I was on Twitter. This was probably back in 2013, maybe. And I heard about this thing called the Gay Gooners. And I was like, what's that? Well, what's that? And, I've been going to football. I've been a season ticket holder at Spurs since 1996. So for me, I've always been out of football. I've never really had a problem. I used to go with my late wife all the time. We knew all the people around us, etc. But I thought, this sounds good. So I started talking on Twitter about, what's this? Why aren't we doing it? And it turns out that was around the same time that Spurs were saying we actually need to engage our LGBTQ plus fans better. So on a wet Tuesday in February of 2014, I think it was, or no, maybe it was the back end of 2013. I can't remember, whatever. There were 8 of us in a room at White Hart Lane, including Simon, which is how Simon and I first met. And the late, great Jonathan Waite, who was the SLO for many, many years. And we came up with this thing of what we wanted to do to sort of, came up with this fan group. We ended up naming it the Proud Lily Whites. We had 3 things that we wanted to sort of address and think about from the beginning, and there's still the 3 things now, which is to be a social hub for LGBTQ plus fans. So somewhere where we can come together, watch football, for it to feel safe and welcoming, to be campaigners for LGBTQ plus inclusion in football and in the world, but using football as a vehicle for that. And also education, to sort of think about, okay, so you might have some issues around LGBTQ plus discrimination, but actually, you know, the first step has to be education, and we still do those things now. So off the back of that, it kind of accelerated my desire to want to, you know, make change in the world, and to use football as a vehicle for doing that, you know. And we know that football can be positive, can be a sort of a positive force for social and cultural transformation. The best football clubs, like ours, have foundations where you do brilliant work in the community, where you're, you know, thinking about whether it's kind of physical health, mental health. You know, you look at the stuff around, you know, like doing stuff in food banks. You know, I haven't watched the last 3 episodes of All or Nothing, but I saw some stuff around some of the stuff that we're doing in terms of dementia. You know, the stuff, sporting memories. There's all sorts of brilliant things that football has the ability and the capacity to do that. You know, very early on, I met a guy called Frank Mugisha, who's a Ugandan LGBTQ plus rights campaigner. Now, Frank isn't a football fan, but he understood the power that the Premier League had in Uganda. And with homosexuality being illegal in Uganda, at the time it was punishable by death. I'm not sure if that's still the same, but it's pretty dangerous. He was like, if we can engage football, then we might have a chance of literally saving people's lives. Now, that means something to me. And so with that, I thought, actually, we can do something here, and I want to, you know, play a small part in that. I love football, right? I absolutely love it. I've first went to White Hart Lane at age 6, and I still get that same feeling when I walk up the stairs and see the pitch that I did as a 6-year-old little girl when I first saw it. That feeling of hope, excitement.
Yeah.
You know, and that feeling of the collective. You don't get
sure
that.
You're going to White Hart Lane? You sure you're going to White Hart Lane? You sure you're going to White Hart Lane with that feeling of hope?
Absolutely. I was 6, remember? 1980.
Those are the days.
and that feeling, that feeling of sort of the collective that you get in a football stadium of 30,000 or 60,000, you don't get it anywhere else. And I don't want to deny that to anybody. So there's something on a small scale for every single person, for every kid, you know, and this is a lot for sort of young men, as particularly, like, you know, because of what sort of masculinity can do, particularly to young gay men, of like feeling like that you don't belong there. But yes, you do. We all do. And I don't want to deny that to everybody. So from an individual level, it's really important to me, but also on the wider scale of how football can transform, you know, can transform communities and transform our culture. And so from the Proud Lily-Whites and that understanding and that sort of desire to do that, and, you know, I've got more than 20 years of business experience of like understanding how to, you know, whether it's selling or operationalizing something or all of those things, using that to do this work in football. And it's kind of, and I've ended up applying to do other stuff, and here I am.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I like you. So one of the things that you were that you've got there is something called Leaders Unlocked.
Yeah,
that sounds really interesting. So maybe just a minute or two on what that's all about.
So Leaders Unlocked is a not-for-profit that works with young people to sort of unlock their potential, I suppose. I'll give a good example is we do a lot of work with police and crime commissioners up and down the country, because one of the things is obviously talking to young people about how their communities are policed is really important. And actually, if you really believe in policing as a way of, it's not just about incarceration or about arresting people and all the rest of it. It's actually about working communities to understand, you know, what about what goes on in communities, and you can work with young people to do that. So Leaders Unlocked, you know, we do work in criminal justice, in mental health, in education, and it's about putting young people at the heart of designing policy, basically, so the policy works for them. And it's run by a woman who I used to work with, and when she sort of struck out on her own, she said to me, "Will you be my one of my non-executive directors, because we've worked together really sort of successfully, and I'm really proud to do that because, you know, and I was actually, funnily enough, just this afternoon, we started a sort of a business development